एक मिनट आगे है Hello everyone, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope everyone getting well by the grace of Almighty Allah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to our institution of Global Professional Free International Webinar. Thank you all for joining with us in this marvelous session, and I hope you stay with us till the program ends. And time to time, you like our Facebook page and subscribe our YouTube channel. And don't forget to mention your friends in the comment box. Because your attachment encourages us to do better and best services to our lovely audience. Our mission is to empower our youth. Before we have completed our 860 webinar successfully. Now I will be presenting webinar number 870 and the topic is translation and teaching methodology. Today we have a speaker from India. Before starting the program, I request everyone to share this webinar in your newsfeed and social media. And don't forget to mention your friends in the comment box. Today our speaker name is Professor Chalini Rana. She is the head of Department of English in Government College of Education, Jammu. She is also an author and a publisher. Let's welcome our speaker to the screen. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for that generous welcome and introduction.
Thank you, ma'am. Give a short description about yourself, then you can start your presentation.
Yeah, hello. Good evening from India. I am from the state Jammu and Kashmir. It's quite famous globally. And I teach English in the Department of English. And along with that, we have teaching methodology. There are several teaching methodologies. And I have chosen one of them, and that is the translation method. I'm sure everybody knows that in Asia, when we teach English language, since it is a foreign language for all of us, and the grammatical structure of English language is different from the Indian languages or the Bangladeshi language. So, because of that, our native students, our local students, they find it difficult to learn English language. And one of the most popular method, which is still going on in schools at the local level, it is the translation method. Although in various schools, the medium of instruction is English, but for teaching various other subjects like mathematics, like social sciences, teachers, though they use the books in medium of English, but when they teach in with the help of mother tongue or the local language. And there is no harm in it, because the student feels closer to their mother tongue or their regional language or their state language or their national language, because they are familiar with that. Whereas English language is a kind of a foreign language and a different language, because at home throughout the day they speak in um, throughout the day they speak in local language, and suddenly in the classroom for few hours they have to listen to English language. So in order to make students familiar, in order to make the concept easier to the students, like the concept of history, like the concept in geography, if the teacher teaches throughout English language, it becomes a little difficult for the local students, especially the students from the marginalized families, the first generation learners who don't have any environment of English language in the home. And you might have seen that though even class also matters when it comes to English language. You know, those who are from rich class, I mean, they can afford expensive education, or they send their children to those schools which are totally English oriented, or in which completely English language is used. And at home, if parents are also well to do, and they have studied in convents, it becomes easy for their children to pick up English language. But what about those who are from the marginalized section of the society, whose parents speak only Bengali or only Hindi language or other Indian languages? For those students, it becomes quite difficult. If we move on further, if we talk about translation only, everybody knows that this is a method. And what is the method? A method is where we learn how much and to which extent we have to teach certain thing. That is a kind of a method. And in translation method, if we talk about the characteristics, the first characteristic is that it is a very popular method. In this, we use the second language, that is the a person's own language, or the mother tongue. Like for in India, for example, in India, we use Hindi, which is a national language. Otherwise, the student can be from Assam, or the student can be from Maharashtra or Marathi language. For them, we use Hindi language, or for local people, we use their local languages. What is the process? In this process, what happens is word to word translation is done, or phrases are used, and later on the sentences are used, and the student is made familiar with the help of mother tongue. For example, if we talk about the nursery class, how do we teach? A for apple, apple mane save. The student is able to associate himself. If we tell them that this is apple, and apple means save, in his own language it is called as save, so he is easily able to make association. Okay, in my language it is save, and in English language it is apple. Although he doesn't identify, see, nursery class student, he doesn't identify APPLE, we don't teach them spellings, but we just, with the help of pictures, we show them these things, and they are being able to make the association. Okay, suppose the mother says eat food, khana khao, right? So if the teacher translates these things of come here, sit down, stand up, go there, find out, okay, so with the help of gestures also, the student understands that yes, this is the association with the language. So this is how we do in when we teach with the help of translation method. What are the basic characteristics of this method if we compare it with direct method, or communicative approach, or bilingual approach, or several other approaches? In this, the basic unit of teaching is word and not the sentence. The sentence comes later on. Then, besides this, the material is graded. In nursery, what you are going to teach, in LKG, UKG, in primary classes, like in India, we have primary classes from 1 to 5. In secondary classes, like 6 to 8. Then in higher classes from 9, 10. Then higher secondary classes like 11, 12. And of course, by the time a student reaches college, we don't require translation method, because by that time, a child is able to assimilate the language or understand the language. So by this stage, we need to grade the material. Then within this translation method, a comparative study of grammar is also done. Grammar is also taught along with teaching of words, and then later on phrases, and then later on the words, the sentences. What other things are involved in translation method? Regular practice. Student keeps on practicing the sentences, translating the sentences, translating the words, and with the help of memory, memorization is required in this method. Then slowly and gradually, as the student reaches higher stages from 6th to 7th class, 7th to 8th, 9th, student starts assimilating the language. He becomes familiar. The first step is adopt, to accept, then adapt. Adapt means becoming familiar, becoming comfortable in that language. And then third one is adapt. Slowly and gradually, by the time a student is in class 10th or 12th, he becomes adept or skillful in that language. And in this, the student associates, okay, this is called this thing in English language, and this is called this thing in my language. So with the help of association, it is done. And so slowly and gradually, the student is able to interpret the language in his own language, as well as in the foreign language, that is English language. So with the help of translation method, what happens is a student becomes skillful in his own language as well as in the foreign language. What are the merits of this method? Through this method, a student is able to form a bond between his own language and the foreign language. So simultaneously, he is thinking in his own language while he is translating that thing in the foreign language. And that is a very interesting phenomena. Is it just that we translate from Hindi to English or English to Hindi? No. Even if some idea comes to our mind, language first comes here. When we speak, we are also simultaneously we are translating that idea. Even if I am thinking in Hindi, when I speak, whatever is there in abstract form, it is coming out in the concrete form with the help of language. Even then, translation is going on. When there are two languages that are involved, for example Hindi and English, I'm thinking in Hindi and I'm speaking in English language, because simultaneously I'm translating the same thing. Now what happens is, in the initial classes, this translation gap, that means when you are thinking and simultaneously you are speaking, with the help of practice, slowly and gradually that gap shrinks and the student speaks flawlessly. Otherwise, it becomes a little difficult for the student to initially, suppose they speak one, two, or three or four sentences. After that, they start fumbling or looking for the equal meaning in English language. But and this is natural, this is common, but with the help of regular practice, regular use of the language, of the foreign language, that is English language, that translation gap in the mind is reduced, and the student speaks fluently and flawlessly, without fumbling or without stopping at any place. So this is something quite interesting. It is an age old method. It's not a new method. Since beginning, whenever somebody had to learn new language, for example the kings had to learn, say, Persian language or some other language, they always use the help of the translator or the interpreter. Besides this, it is based on the principle of known to unknown. In your language, that this is called as rubber band, or this is called as mobile. Okay, although in Hindi and every we have accepted this in our languages also, but let us say book, we call it book in English, whereas in Hindi we call it kitab. So at home, the child knows that this is kitab, and then the teacher teaches him that book. Book means kitab, or kitab means book. So simultaneously, he is becoming adept in both the languages. So from known, it is a journey from known to unknown. Initially, when India became independent, in those days, the teachers used this method frequently. It was a very common method, and paragraphs were given to the children to translate. Say, in initial stages, they were taught words, then they were taught phrases, and then they were shifted to sentences. And after that, they were given, first they were told to translate these sentences, okay, and then as the classes, as they upgraded, slowly and gradually they started translating paragraphs, then stories, entire stories given in their mother tongue, and that is being translated into English. So if we talk about the demerit of this method, the biggest demerit is that it takes lot of time, though there are many benefits of this, but it takes a lot of time, because every time a person has to simultaneously think in both the languages. But it's not a very big demerit, I would say. If the teacher is skillful, then definitely this method really helps. It saves time and energy of the teacher, because in languages, if we see, there are certain things which are abstract in nature. Suppose I said book mane kitab, this is something which I can show, this is something which is concrete. But what about if I say honesty? How I'm going to show them what is honesty? Because it is an abstract idea, it is a value. So if I have some uh, um equal word, or the same thing in Hindi language or in mother tongue, then immediately if I use the translate, honesty means imandari, the student will immediately come to know, and this saves lot of time and energy. Besides this, there are so many things. If we talk about concrete things, there are so many things which the child might not have seen. For example, baraf, okay, or snow. For example, snow, if the student is from the places where there are oceans, he has never seen any hills, he has never been to the Himalayas, then how we are going to convey what is snow? How much would we explain that it is white in color, or it melts after some time, and there is sunrise, it melts, you find it on the hills, on the mountains. How much will you explain? But if you say snow means baraf, immediately the student comes to understand the word. So it saves a lot of time and energy of the teacher, and the foreign phraseology is explained in much better manner with the help of translation. Suppose you say two and two makes four, or a stitch in time saves nine, right? The equivalent can be given in their own language, of course, after a little bit of expansion. And with the help of this method, if we compare this method with other methods, uh, the children learn faster with the help of translation method, because they don't have to apply too much mind, or they don't have to spend too much of their energy. Besides this, the teacher's labor is also saved. The teacher does not have to do too many things, or he does not have to, or she does not have to spend too much time in making the child understand. And of course, with the help of this method, the child is becoming adept in both the languages, since as the citizens of our country, or of our state, we need to respect our own language. If we only talk about English language, then definitely our languages would be marginalized. And since there is no harm in learning new language, then definitely what happens is, simultaneously you are doing justice with your own language as well as the foreign language. Otherwise, in certain schools, what happens, like for example convent schools, or these kinds of schools where they charge a lot of fee. Many a times what they do is they uh, there was a time in the 70s and 80s and 90s in India when they used to fine the student for speaking in Hindi language in the school, 5 rupee fine or 10 rupee fine. Now, what happens is, because of this kind of attitude, the students develop a negative attitude towards their own language. If I speak in my language in this school, then what will happen? I will be punished. I will have to pay penalty. And I think it is wrong for an independent country to promote such kind of things, right? If we have to learn language, it is treat it as a language only. Okay, we need not to give a high status to some foreign language, for example say English, and give lower status to our own languages. No, this should not be done. A language should be treated as a language. And yes, learn as many languages as you want, French, German, whatever language you want to learn, you can learn. And it only improves your intelligence. It proves if you are a polyglot, if you have learned many languages, it shows that you are quite intelligent. It is a sign of intelligence if you know more than one or two or three languages. So there is no harm in it. And translation helps in learning the language. Okay, for example, when we meet somebody, we say namaste in India, right? In English we have different terms, hello or good morning or good afternoon. Okay, then what do we say in French? Bonjour. Okay, so if you're teaching, say if we in India we say, in English we say hello, in English it becomes bonjour. Hello for. So it becomes easy for the student to learn the language. And comprehension is also easily tested with the help of this language. Now if we talk about whether it's an absolute method, let me tell you, as a teacher trainer, no single method is useful in all the conditions, right? Because in the primary, yes, the child has come to you, use a good mixture of different methods. See the composition of your class, see the composition of students, what is their background, from where they have come, how much they have been exposed to this language. Suppose a child's mother is a teacher and father is also a teacher, right? And they live in urban area. You will find that there is a difference between the student who comes from rural area and his parents are not working, right? So you will find that his language acquisition or exposure to English language is less as compared to that child. That child will be able to pick up the language easily, while the other one is not. So you have to see the composition of the student, and you have to change your methodology of teaching accordingly, right? So there are different methods: direct method, communicative method, then constructive method, inductive method, deductive method. You see the composition of your class, you see the person in front of you, and then the teachers need to use those kinds of methods which are useful for the student. Okay, which is helpful for the student, where the student is comfortable with the method. And to begin with, one can always start with translation method. It is one of the easiest method, and students are quite comfortable with it. And of course later on in the by the time a child reaches college or university, they become comfortable. If the teacher is giving the entire lecture in English language, they're by that time they have assimilated the language, they have been trained in that language. It becomes very easy for them to understand in the direct approach, or directly when a person is speaking in English language only, right? But initially, definitely it is important. And for teaching grammar also, the structure of the sentence, subject, verb, object, subject, object, verb. Okay, because all the Indian languages or Asian languages, their sentence structure or word order in a sentence is different from the word order in a sentence of Indian languages or even Bangladeshi language. So that is the basic difference. And because of this basic difference, what happens is, if a child says मैं खाना खाता हूँ, and there he says I'm eating food. Okay, so there I am eating, the verb is between the subject and object, whereas in Hindi language the verb is in the last and the subject and object are in the beginning, right? Because of this difference in basic sentence structure or word order, when a child speaks in English language, it takes him a lot of time to translate from his own mother tongue to English language. But we can always overcome this problem with the help of practice. As much as practice should be given to the student. Once the student is a little comfortable in translation method, obviously the teacher needs to move, or the person needs to move to the direct method or the communicative method, which is going to help the students. And some of the practical suggestions which one must keep in mind is too much emphasis on just word to word translation in the later classes should not be done, because this is what will happen is, with the help of this, what will happen is the student will not make too much effort in learning the language quickly. Okay, he will always, or she will always depend on this thing. He or she will always depend on, translating the thing. No, initially it should be good, it should be followed, but in the later stages it should not be followed. And then if the word is simple, okay, stand up, sit down. There is no need to give translated version of the method. Would you like to take coffee or tea? Would you like to drink? Would you like to eat? Okay, or shut your eyes, open your mouth, say goodbye, say goodbye. Okay, so there are so many things which can be taught with the help of gesture. So the teacher need not to give the equivalent translated word for that word. But if the word is difficult, then definitely immediately the teacher should give the translated version even in higher classes. For example, sickle. Okay, uh, for teaching this word, the teacher can draw the figure or the diagram of a sickle, right? So there are different varieties which the teacher can use. It depends on the intelligence and resourcefulness and training of the teacher, right? And as the student is able to build up the language, the teacher can, what the teacher can do is, after teaching the story or poem, what they can do is they can tell the student to give the comprehension in the English language. Okay, so after 10th, it is said that if they have the student has a good, by that time a student develops good command over English language in terms of reading, writing, speaking and listening. Okay, once you have given the translation, after that promote the student to listen carefully and then speak the same thing. There are 4 skills. Language is basically a skill, just like driving. No matter how much you study in theory, until and unless you will take a car and you drive, you won't become skillful. Or swimming, for example, swimming, until and unless you throw yourself in water and you try to learn the tricks of swimming, you won't be able to become a swimmer by just reading the books. Similarly, language is a skill, and the teacher needs to remember, in this method we need to remember the student has to apply this knowledge in their real life. Okay, so whenever we start, we should start with giving listening training, ear training. The more you will listen, you will be a better speaker. And for reading and writing, they are associated with each other. uh, the more you will read, the better you will be a writer. And yes, since it is a skill, we cannot do it in isolation, right? uh, Initially we can do it in isolation with the help of some practice in, by focusing on one particular skill, but slowly and gradually we need to move in an integrated form, where we are doing all the 4 things simultaneously, right? For example, make the child listen to an audio clip. Sorry, an audio clip, and then stop the audio and ask certain questions to the students. Okay, or tell them to speak whatever they have listened for 20 minutes. Tell them to give the gist of that particular audio clip within 2 minutes. This will help them in speaking. Then if you talk about writing, after playing the audio, you can ask the students to write about that in 100 words. Okay, what you have interpreted or what you have comprehended. What is the comprehension of the student? The student will be able to, he has done listening, he has understood, and then he will write also. So this is how we can help the students learn these languages. This is quite important. Later on, it helps them in becoming a good speaker. And if we talk about becoming a good speaker, initially, if you have given good training in translation, and of course along with a good combination of other methods in the later classes, in higher classes, obviously by the time a child is in class 10th, he will be a good speaker, he will be a good writer. You tell him to write a paragraph, or to expand, or to summarize, or to write the gist. The student will be comfortable with that if you have given good practice and training. And if the student has memorized the vocabulary well, he or she, if he has build up the words, translation helps in building vocabulary or learning new words. If the student has developed good vocabulary, whenever he will write in an impressive manner. He will not repeat. There will be no repetition of words. He will be using the adjectives, the antonyms, the synonyms very comfortably. Comprehension, if you have given right training right from the beginning, in the later stages when they have to appear for competitive exams, for entrance examinations, there where they are asked to write a précis writing. Okay, there is a paragraph of 300 words, you have to reduce it to one third. Okay, you need to learn the art of writing. There your writing, your understanding comes into play, right? And sometimes you are given one sentence, say one phrase, and you have to expand. You are given one topic, environmental pollution, this is the topic, and you have to write in 3000 words later on when you appear for public service commission examination. If you are given right training right from the beginning, then only you are able to expand one line or one topic into 3000 words. Then report writing, right from the beginning the teacher needs to give the students practice, say through with the help of picture composition, with the help of hints, with the help of certain under guided composition, with the help of controlled composition. When the student is given the right amount of training in these things, in the later stages it becomes very easy for the student to write well, of course, and to speak well whenever he or she gets a chance to speak in debates, in seminars, in conferences, and sometimes in extempore competitions where uh, they are given the topic just 2 minutes before the beginning of the competition. So within 2 minutes they have to gather all the thoughts, and then they have to speak, right? So if you have given good training right from the beginning in translation method, it becomes easy for they have good practice, it becomes very easy for them to express themselves for 3-4 minutes in the for the same topic. And even if it is expanded to 30 minutes to 1 hour, it becomes easy for them. So right from the beginning we have to use the right combination of methodology, so that it becomes easy for them to become fluent and skillful in that language. Not only just fluent, but in reading and understanding and writing well, whether it is academic writing or creative writing. In creative writing, I hope all of you understand poetry, writing of stories, writing of essays. Essays comes both in creative as well as academic writing, right? And in academic writing, your dissertations, your thesis, then your reports, any information that is based on factual knowledge, we require these capabilities. It becomes easy for the students. So um, learning a language depends a lot on the right kind of methodology that is being used in the classrooms, especially in the Asian classrooms, whether it is India or Bangladesh. I believe there is not much difference between the social structure or composition of a class in Bangladesh and India. I believe, our social structure is similar. And as far as learning of language is concerned, English is a foreign language for both of us, right? If we talk about the structure of our own languages, Indian language or Bangladeshi language, the structure is similar. The basic grammatical structure is similar. And the basic grammatical structure of English language is different. So that is why, it takes lot of efforts on the part of the teacher as well as the student to make the student learn the language, and for the student to adopt and become adept or skillful in the English language. So I hope, are there any questions if anybody wants to ask any question? Am I audible? I would like to ask the host, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Should I continue, or you want to ask some questions? Should I continue, or you want to ask some questions?
Yes, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay, okay,
After your presentation, we have Q&A session, question and
okay,
answer session.
okay. So
Okay, ma'am.
for learning in this method, a student need to have good memory, a good sense of association, right? And then good number of hours need to be spent in practice. And for practice, the teacher can use oral exercises, the teacher can use written exercises, the teacher can use teaching aids, the teacher can also use various these days we have technology, the teacher can use technology. Therefore exercises, um, initially one should start with guided composition or guided exercises. Under that there are a lot of activities which can be given, for example dictation, for example translation of words, for example translation of phrases, then matching of the words in Hindi language, in mother tongue, and in English language. Then comparative presentations. Suppose you can take group A, group B, or student one and student two. Student one can present something on a topic, for example, nationalism. The student can present in Hindi and tell the person B to spontaneously translate whatever this fellow, suppose the fellow has said 10 sentences, let this other student start and translate those 10 sentences into English language. So whatever problem comes to the student, the teacher can help and give hints. Then with the help of dialogues play a great role in this, in the for example fifth or sixth class, the teacher can take the use of help of dialogues. The student can be brought to the stage, and one student can act as a banker, other student can act as a customer. Okay, the teacher should tell them the entire scene. Okay, you are a customer, you are going to the bank, and you have to ask these kind of things to the banker, and the banker has to reply like this. Now you speak the same thing in English. Okay, so it becomes a very funny activity also. The student does not feel any burden in learning the language, because language should not be taught in a theoretical manner. Okay, whether it is translation method or any other method, language should not be taught as if it is physics or chemistry and there are difficult formulas. No, it should be a fun activity. Many a times one of the very interesting activity which students really enjoy is you play some English song and tell them some popular song which nowadays students listen on YouTube. Tell them to translate the same song in their own language, in mother tongue or Hindi, and when they sing the song, they really enjoy, the entire class enjoys. Okay, give them some Hindi song and then tell them to translate that into English language. So this also becomes a fun activity. You can play some short video, some scene where the hero and heroine is talking, or the son is talking to the father. Okay, play the video for a while, say for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then after that tell the students to act like a father and a son, and mute the voice of the video. You can play it on mute mode and tell them now they are speaking, you have to lip sync, and you have to say the same thing in your own language, or you can play Hindi film and then they can translate the same thing in English language. So When we teach something translation through this method, it does not become a burden on the student, and they enjoy and they remain engaged in the activity. Then suppose the teacher teaches some poem, okay, on nature, let us say on nature. Tell the students to translate that poem in their own language, or produce a similar poem in their own language, or from their own language to another language. This not only helps in developing the language skills, this develops intelligence as well as creativity of the student. Okay, rather than just come to the class and then teach the poem and then go away and give some questions and go away. No, that is not the right method. With the help of these theoretical methods, the student only becomes passive learner. Language teaching or translation methods should be student centric, where the student has to apply the mind. Just give him certain hints, just give him the right teaching aids, the supportive material, okay, and ask the students to come up with the answers. Let him work, let her work, and then let them do the translation or apply their own mind. That is going to help them in learning the language faster than the outdated method. And of course, comparative exercises in your own language as well as in other languages. Similarly, assignments, like you select the phrases and idioms in your own language and then translate them into English language. Suppose you give them, uh, tomorrow we will have class test, you have to learn these 20 idioms and phrases, and you have to translate them into English language. Try to give the closest interpretation as far as possible. The word to word translation of an idiom is not possible, but again, it is a fun activity when the student tries to translate that in other language. It becomes very kind of a very interesting activity for them, and they learn the same thing for kind of a lifelong, it becomes a lifelong memory for them. When we talk about translation method, if we talk about the text, the kind of text or the kind of teaching material that we need to use, we need experts for this. Those who have the psychological understanding, those who know the maxims of teaching, those who know the principles of teaching, only they can do justice with the teaching material. Okay, for this we need to see the age of the student, we need to see the psychological background of the student in the initial classes. If the student is in higher classes, then definitely by that time a student becomes very conscious, and for him some rapid exercises can be given. Then for assimilation purpose also, we need to have lot of exercises for practice, written exercises as well as oral exercises. The teacher needs to be very resourceful for teaching this method. Okay, just prescribed methods are not enough, because in Indian classes, what happens is, I don't know about Bangladesh much, but in Indian classes, within one class, we have people from different languages. We don't have only students from Punjabi language in a class or Marathi language in a class. Many a times, the class is composed of people who have different mother tongues or different tone of mother tongues. So in that case also, the teacher needs to be very resourceful. He has to see the student has come from which background and how is it going to help them in learning the language. The exercise need to be composed or designed in such a manner that all the students are able to use that exercise or attempt that exercise in the best possible manner. Then, in order to promote language learning through translation, many a times we can give the students the exercises like, for example, tell us about your daily routine from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. What do you do? Okay, tell us first in your own language and then tell us about it in English language. So he says the first sentence in Hindi language, he will say the same sentence in English language. I wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning. then I go to freshen up. Okay. Then after that, I brush my teeth, I take a bath, then I worship for some time, then I take breakfast, then I get ready to go to school. I wear my uniform, take my bag and my lunch box, and then I go to school. I take the bus, I reach in the school, and then all the activities that he does in the school, right from assembly to classroom activity. Okay, what do you do in your classroom? Okay, so let him first speak in his own language, and then let him speak in the English language. Not only this, just a minor activity like how do you prepare a cup of tea? Okay, ask one student to speak in regional language, and then his own friend. You can make a group or pair A, B, C, D. Tell a person to tell how do you prepare a cup of tea and in Indian language, and then or in their mother tongue, and the other student his own pair in English language. So you will find that students enjoy a lot while speaking about these activities. Then there can be certain group activities, okay, in which you give certain hints and build up a story. Okay, build up a story. Not only just story, you can just ask them to complete one short sentence. Last night I saw a dream. I was running in a jungle and then suddenly dash dash. They have to complete the story. You will find that uh, again it will build language as well as it will trigger creativity of the student. Okay, so these innovative methods in the beginning in the schools, especially in at the primary level, at the secondary level and higher secondary level, these are the things that develop the faculty of the mind, and student becomes comfortable with the language. Normally in Indian schools, in normal schools, by the time a child completes his study, say for 12 years or 14 years, uh, if the student is not given enough training, enough exposure, and enough activities in which he or she is involved, as an active learner. Otherwise, the trend is the teacher comes, teaches, and goes away, and the students note down some things in their notebook. This is not going to help them in learning a language. Language cannot be treated as a subject. Language should always be treated as a skill, because they have to apply that knowledge in their real life when they speak to someone, when they ask questions. Asking questions is also very important when it comes to language learning. You ask a question in Hindi and tell the student to answer in English. Okay, so likewise, so until and unless language is treated as a skill, the student will not be able to become comfortable even after studying for 12 or 14 years like it happens in India. So we need to realize this. Take the mic, tell the student to speak in front of the public. That is going to help them in learning the language well. When it comes to facing the interviews, why when it comes to facing the interviews, the student, though the student is very good in writing, he has scored good in entrance examination, in PSC, Public Service Commission examinations, but when it comes to interviews, the student becomes nervous because the child or that student was not given enough exposure, enough practice for speaking in the schools and in the colleges. So the faulty methods are responsible for not letting our children learn the language well. I don't know about Bangladesh, but in India it is so. So now the time is changing, and thankfully now the students have alternate mediums. Students have technology. They have language learning apps. They have language learning games that helps them in learning the language, and online dictionary. Immediately, if you don't know the meaning of some word, you immediately ask Google, and the Google tells you the answer. So thankfully, we are living in the era of technology, and now it is quite easy. And your Google even translates everything for you. right? But when you have to speak on the spot, Google is not going to help you. You will have to speak. So it's always better that right from the beginning you get the training. So that is, of course, when you apply the language in real life, when you practice, when you actually speak, when you keep on listening, like songs, documentaries, uh, documentaries based on, say, World War I, World War II, or anything else, anything important to say on geology, on history, on geography. Uh, while learning the content, you learn the language. And then just don't become a passive learner, become an active learner. Whatever you have listened, you try to speak it. Speak in front of the mirror. Okay, see yourself, how you present, how you use your para languages, right? So that is going to help. And of course, when it comes to learning the grammar, that students are unable to locate, because the teachers don't tell them the basic difference between the structure of English language, the word order, and the word order of the their own languages. When you know the basic difference, then it becomes easy for you to understand, oh, so this is the grammatical pattern of this language and this is my grammatical pattern. So when you speak, you do not reverse the word order. You keep the word order the way it is in English language, and of course you already know your own language. So, and when you understand that there is a basic difference between the sentences, when you speak with the help of practice, you reduce that gap when you have to speak English language. So, with the help of practice, with the help of memory, with the help of assimilation, association, interpretation, you can do wonders, and it becomes easy for you to speak the language. And speak as much as you can within your group. Then you can make your vlogs, you can make your videos like we have these days. You can use TikTok, use them for learning language rather than for wasting time. So there also, there are so many people who write so well on their Facebook walls, and that definitely improves their writing skills, reading skills, and when they speak, of course, their speaking skills. So, uh, obviously, material, practice, the teacher, the student, all of them together, when they do the right things at the right place, they are able to do wonders. And should we use only translation method? No. Initially, we should use translation method, but as the child progresses and becomes comfortable, slowly and gradually, we should move to other approaches like inductive approach, deductive approach, communicative approach, and then of course the direct method, and then of course the other methods like constructivism, where largely the student has to do the work rather than the teacher. The teacher just prepares the material and the student has to execute each and every thing. The student has to work upon it and then come up with the answers in reading form or in writing form. So, likewise, if we talk about uh, the higher classes, in higher classes, what we can do is we can ask the students to compose the story in their own language and ask the peer group to compose the same story in other language. So similarly, comprehension parts, similarly the pressy writing part, then report writing, all such things, they will help them in understanding and learning the language well. And if we talk about the evaluation part, in any method or approach, evaluation plays a great role, right? It's not that the teacher has given the task and he or she does not evaluate that. One has to evaluate, and error checking is must if the student has done some error, because that acts as a kind of a feedback for the student. And when the teacher sees For example, in diagnostic testing, you know, in diagnosis, some students are good at speaking, some are good at reading, some are good at writing. So in that case, we can take remedial measures. Okay, if you see this student is good in speaking, but when it comes to writing the answers, the student is not able to write well. The teacher needs to give special attention and more exercises for writing. Similarly, if some student has problem in grammar, the teacher needs to give uh, practice papers in grammar, right? So that is called as diagnostic testing. One student, it's not necessary that he will be good in all the four skills, right? Speaking, reading, writing, listening with understanding, right? So many a times you play an audio clip, you will find that you have played the one audio clip for 3 minutes. And if there are 30 students, if you tell them to write the answers, you will find 30 different answers, because every individual, they are listening to the same piece of information, but every individual is interpreting the same information in different manner, right? How we come to know this? When we evaluate, right? And we give one story to 30 students. All the 30 students, when we tell them to write the summary of the story, all these 30 students, because they have unique intelligence, because they apply their own idea and thoughts, we will get 30 different interpretations. So evaluation is also must, where the teacher comes to know the basic information, that this is how this word has been comprehended by the student, or this phrase has been comprehended by the student. So with the help of evaluation, what happens is, if there is some students perform well, because of the individual difference, some students are not able to perform that much well. So there is no problem with that, because every individual is unique in nature. So what the teacher can do is, the teacher can on the basis of evaluation, can give the feedback to the student. And if there is a problem somewhere in the area, like in speaking or reading or writing, the teacher can go for remedial measures. If the student is unable to read, the teacher can give him exposure to reading, more practice for reading, give more time to that student for reading. Similarly, in writing exercises, as well as in then a variety of tests should be used. It should not be just subjective or objective, but a good combination of objective tests, subjective tests, because it helps us in understanding the different faculties of our brain. So, variety of tests, interesting evaluation sheets, practice papers should be used by the teachers. In the primary classes, largely picture-based compositions or picture-based reading should be promoted. In higher classes, since by that time students become little mature, they have more experience of life, then abstract kind of things can be asked from them. It will develop language as well as intelligence of the student. So any methodology, whatever methodology we apply, it requires a lot of intelligence, resourcefulness on the part of the teacher. Right? It depends on the teacher how much he or she makes the content interesting for the students. And what is the purpose? The purpose is, by the time a student has come to class 6th, by the time he leaves class 6th, he or she should have enough knowledge and skill of that language by the time he moves on to class 7th. Every year, the best skill, best information, and knowledge needs to be added to the kit of the student. So that is going to help our students in learning the language as well as developing their intelligence, knowledge, and information. And with the help of constructivism, translation method can do wonders. But for that requires a lot of efforts on the part of the teacher. And in developing innovative and unique and interesting exercises, it can do wonders. And should we daily use student-centric method? No. Any method you will use daily will become monotonous. It will be boring for the students. So a good mixture of interesting methods need to be introduced for the students. So I hope I have made this translation method clear, that how much and uh, what should be the grading, what should be the level that needs to be taught to the students. So with these words, I would like to stop here, and I would request the host to take over.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation about translation and teaching methodology. Thank you so much. I hope our participants learned something new from you. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, now we are going to our quiz competition, and after that we come back again with our Q&A session. Okay, ma'am? Okay, thank you. Dear participants, now we are going to our quiz competition. Today our quiz code is quiz IGP. The code is quiz IGP. Let's enjoy our quiz video. Slide in this algorithm. Dear participants, this is our quiz session time. You can join this session by slido.com, and after that you have to put the code, and the code is quiz IGP. Then you can join this quiz session. You can also scan our QR code from the screen to join this session. And to the top 10 quiz competition winners get their quiz certificate after this session from our Facebook page. We started our quiz competition after 1 minute later. So join the hurry up and mention your friends in the comment box to join this quiz session. Now 42 participants already joined with us. So don't forget to mention your friends in the comment box. To join this session, you have to go to slido.com, and after that you have to put the code, and the code is quiz IG. I remind you again that there is no relationship between quiz completion certificate and the international webinar certificate. After this quiz, we have Q&A, and after that we proceed to our certification process. We have started our quiz competition in a while, so join the hurry up. We start our quiz competition now. So be ready. Our first question is, the language teaching methodology focuses on translation between their L1 and L2. Is it communicative language teaching or grammar translation? Option number 2, grammar translation is the right answer. Our next question is, this language teaching methodology focuses on memorization and repetition of phrases and expression. Is it audiolingual method or communicative language teaching? Option number 1, audiolingual method is the right answer. Our next question is, which is probably the dominant teaching methodology in ESL today? Is it grammar translation method or communication language teaching approach? Option number 2, communication language teaching approach is the right answer. Our next question is, which language teaching methodology focuses on the relationship between language form and function? Is it direct or natural method? And option number 2, functional motion. Option number 2 is the right answer. Our next question is, what is methodology? Is it classroom specification for accomplishing linguistic objectives or everything involved in how to teach? Option number 2, everything involved in how to teach is the right answer. Our next question is, in the grammar translation method, is it much attention is paid to pronunciation or classes are taught in the mother tongue? Option number 2, classes are taught in the mother tongue is the right answer. Our next question is, what is research methodology? Is it the methods you intend to use to collect data or it relates to the research question? Option number 1, the methods you intend to use to collect data is the right answer. Our next question is, dynamic teaching is the relationship between technique and the student or approach and classroom practice. Option number 1, option number 2, approach and classroom practice is the right answer. Next question is, why are teaching approaches hard to define? Is it because They are actually very simple concept, or because, as the word says, they are only a process. Option number one, because they are actually very simple concept, is the right answer. The last question is, what precedes learning according to learning centered methodology? Is it comprehension or visualization? Option number one, comprehension, is the right answer. Thank you everyone for your active participation in this quiz session. And congratulations our top 10 quiz competition winners. Top 10 quiz competition winners get their quiz certificate after this session from our official Facebook page. Our Facebook page address is Institute of Global Professionals. Now we are proceed to our Q&A session. After a short video clip, we come back again. Thank you. Welcome back, ma'am. Dear participants, this is our Q&A session, and you can send your question in the comment box. Ma'am, our first question is, good morning, ma'am. And the question is, what is the importance of grammar translation method in teaching and learning?
Thank you very much, Flomi Selviejo, for asking me this question. Flomi, in the initial stages, especially if we talk about the rural students or students who are living in very far off areas, who are not exposed to any other language other than their mother tongue, for them grammar translation method is an important method, very important method, because they don't have knowledge about other languages, they don't have resources. There are so many places in India where still we don't have technology, the right internet connection, where the students, throughout the day they cannot see YouTube and all such things, from where they can get the material. So they know only one language that is spoken in their house. So when they learn a new language in the school, if the teacher uses direct method, it becomes difficult for them to understand. A first class student, when first day he goes to the school, if the teacher is speaking only in English language, it will go over his head, he won't be able to understand what the teacher is saying. So but if the teacher uses both the languages, sit down son, open your lunch box, apna lunch box kholo, eat your food, it becomes very easy for the child to understand the language. Simultaneously, he will learn both the things. But if only one language, English language, is used, the student will be scared. He will not be able to understand what the teacher is saying. So in the initial stages, especially those children who have not been exposed to new language, who don't have any environment where they can learn new language, for them in the school or in the initial stages, grammar translation method is really good. It is very helpful for them. It becomes easy for them to learn the new language. That is the importance. What are the methods in teaching? Okay. I can see the question. Should I read? Yeah. What are the methods in teaching translation and why is it important? The method is to translate the words. Okay. Like I told you in primary classes, A for apple, apple means save. M for mango, mango means arm. So simultaneously the child learns, okay, in my language this is arm, but in new language it is mango. So translation of words and slowly and gradually phrases. This is a bottle. This is a bottle. ये एक बोतल है. So the student is able to understand, and then moving on to sentences, then moving on to paragraphs, moving on to stories, moving on to poems. The grading level becomes difficult, from simple to complex, from known to unknown. This is how we approach in translation method. And when the student becomes comfortable, say by the age of 10, by fifth class, by sixth class, the student becomes largely comfortable in the basics of new language. After that, we can start a good mixture of other methods. So initially, especially in marginalized places, we need to use this method. This is the process that is used in this method. Mother tongue is used to make the child understand the new language. Okay. The question is from Facebook user. What is diagnostic testing? What is a holistic rubric? Uh, Diagnostic testing. You might have seen, whenever you have fever, you are not well, you go to the doctor. You don't understand what is your problem. You go and the doctor says, okay, mask लो, okay, yes, do this, take a deep breath, uses stethoscope or blood pressure machine, right? What he's doing diagnosis. Diagnosis means what is the actual problem. So in English language, the same term has been used for diagnostic testing. So teacher takes the test, then teacher comes to know, okay, what is the problem with this student? He is weak in which area? What is the problem area? Is he not able to speak well? He writes well but unable to speak well. The student speaks well but unable to write well. So when you come to know, accordingly you come for remedial measures. When the doctor diagnoses the problem, the doctor prescribes some tablets. You use this medicine and this problem will be resolved. Similarly, the teacher has to use the remedial measure. Okay, speaking problem, then give exposure in classroom, give him topics so that he can speak. So this is known as diagnostic testing. Samuel F. Morris has asked, what are the gaps in teaching methods translation and how to eradicate those gaps? The gap is not in the translation method. The gap comes when the person has to translate actually. And it takes a lot of time to translate from Hindi to English or from mother tongue to English language. It happens because of lack of practice. The more practice a student has with the language, the gap will be lesser, and a time will come when there will be no gap, say after 10-12 years of actual practice. So with the help of practice, we can eradicate those gaps. Practice and exposure to the language. Any other question? Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive discussion, ma'am. One of our participants commented, dear participants, we are still waiting for your question.
Kamrul, I would like to ask you whether students were benefited by this lecture.
Obviously, ma'am, I see lots of comments for you.
Was it
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Yeah, was it easy for them to understand? Was it easy for them to understand?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, already today lots of participants are attend in this session.
Okay.
Ma'am, our
You are
next question is,
okay. Does grammar translation method has any limitations? Yes. And I told you in the beginning, one single method can never be always successful because we have variety of students in the classroom. Their needs are different. They are from different families. They are different from different backgrounds. Their needs are different. Their level of understanding is different. So yes, every method has certain limitations. The teacher has to use good mixture of different methods. And what is the limitation of translation method? That it is good in the initial stages, but not in the higher stages. It is not that much useful in college and university stages because by that time the student has good practice in English language.
thank
Yes.
you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation and your wonderful answer. On the comment box, I see answering the question very well, ma'am. Kudos. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
A
Thank you
lot
for
of
inviting me.
compliments for you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ma'am,
you
what
for
is your
inviting
last and final words for our participants?
me.
Ma'am, what is your last and final words for our participants?
Okay, my final words. My final words is don't take language as a burden. Okay, learn language joyfully. Then you will be able to easily assimilate, accept, and use the language. Be confident while speaking, and don't be afraid of making any mistakes. So, thank you very much for inviting me, and it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear participants, today our program name is Translation and Teaching Methodology, and for our webinar and certificate code is IGP 4948. The code is IGP 4948. Please note that code. The code is IGP 4948. Without code, no one is eligible for certificate. With code, you can claim your certificate anytime from our website. Our website address is eduigp.com. After downloading your certificate, don't forget to celebrate with IGP checking. Thank you very much for your active participants in this session. We hope we'll meet together in our next session and this tomorrow morning session. Thank you everyone and stay happy and stay safe.